that maybe it wasn't a great fit. Perfect. So we're just going to talk about again what those green flags and red flags are when you're looking for gigs, accepting a gig, and then once you've gotten the gig, what kind of communication you should be looking for, and how, to be a good cast member, for the producer that you're working with, right? So all of those different aspects of being booked and then acknowledging that it's a blessing to be booked as a burlesque performer. So that's really the goal behind this workshop. And then, just quickly, my credentials, I have been performing and producing burlesque shows, performing for over 10 years and producing for over eight of that. Um, and I've, performed and produced all across the Midwest and the Southwest now. Um, I know there's definitely people out there with broader experiences than me for sure, but I do have a pretty good idea of what to look for and what to watch out for. Um, and having moved to a new burlesque scene, kind of partway through my career, it was very interesting how some people would treat me because they thought that I was new, because they forgot that I'd already been doing it for 6 years, just because I was new here. And so what does that look like as a new performer showing up for yourself in these spaces? So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So I am a slideshow girly. I love my slideshows. So we do have a little agenda, and then we'll kind of go through the slides here. I do this class in person normally, and we do a little movement break here. So ignore that. We're not going to do choreo tonight. But otherwise, we'll just do like a quick welcome and disclaimer. We'll talk about what it means to get booked. We'll talk about green flags, red flags, tips and tricks. I'll give you guys like just a little bit of like homework to do. And then we'll just close it out with, questions, comments, and anything of that nature. So, um, again, my credentials, I've been doing this for over a decade and producing for over 8 years. And then I've been working with the New Mexico Burlesque Festival for 4 years now. So I have a lot of different experiences from everything from a very tiny, bar show or private gig to a full scale like theater festival production. And so all the the variations in between. And I love teaching. It's one of my favorite things that I do even as part of my day job. And so getting to do that as burlesque performer and just sharing what I've learned with people is always very exciting to me. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be here and be a part of this workshop. My disclaimer though is it's all based off of my experiences and what I've learned. And so you have maybe experienced and learned different things. And if something that I say just doesn't ring true for you, like that's okay. I'm always a big fan of like take the parts that make sense and help and leave out the parts that aren't true for your experiences. That's okay. Because we've all got different backgrounds. And so I am not the infallible word of burlesque holy truth. It's just my experiences kind of consolidated into a semi-cohesive stream of thoughts here. So with that, we will go ahead and so we'll talk about just like getting booked and then we'll talk about what those green flags are. So when we talk about getting booked, that is everything from you see a casting call posted by a local producer and you submit an application. Maybe you're part of a troupe that does some sort of rotating, you know, we have a monthly show and if you're in the troupe, you perform every other month. Maybe um, you maybe there's not a casting call, but there's a production company in your town that you want to work with, so you've kind of proactively reached out to them and they've said, yes, we'd love to have you in an upcoming show. Um, there's a lot of different ways that you can get booked. Um, but whatever that looks like for you, right? You've landed it. You've got a commitment that you are going to be a part of an upcoming show. So what does that mean now? You have committed to doing this thing. They have committed to booking you. So what does that mean? And it can be different in many different scenarios. So it's good to discuss those things up front, which will kind of bring us right to our first, topic. We'll talk about green flags. So if you've just gotten a booking, like what things do you look for um, when you just got an acceptance email or you just had a phone call or a conversation with the producer and they say, "Yep, you're in the show." Like what kinds of things or behaviors or information looks like a green flag to you?
A green flag for me is when I actually got booked for a MC gig on Friday, and the person whose birthday party it is, she went and got a whole video of the room.
Okay, yeah.
So that for me was a green flag.
Yeah, because now you know like your venue logistics and the size of the space and all those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else might be like a green flag or something that you would hope to see if you just got booked?
More communication. Just
Always
like constant
communication. Yeah.
constant communication. I want to know it all the time.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. So that's
For
actually
me,
my very first.
oh,
Oh, what was that?
sorry, I was just going to say for me, it's if they present a contract, just because that makes me feel safe.
Oh, a contract. Yeah, like a written agreement between the two of you. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
100%. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Great examples. First bullet point here is clear communication. So whether that is, you know, everybody does it a little bit differently. I think a lot of people these days for more local shows, it's a lot of like group chats, either over Messenger or Instagram, a lot of email back and forth. Some folks are using Discord, Facebook groups, right? So what, like, if they don't make it clearly abundant to you when you accept the gig, you can ask them, how do you communicate with your performers? Where will I get all of my information? Right? You can ask that up front. That's a green flag if they tell you that out of the gate. If you say yes, I'll do this show, and you're automatically added to a group chat, like green flag, that's a good sign. But then are they putting regular updates, like you said? You want to know the details. Are you getting a regular stream of communication so that you know that everything is going to be smooth on show day, right? So clear communication. And then I think, is it Epiphany? I think your name popped up when you spoke. Information provided in writing. Um, so the way I tend to run my more local shows is um, once you have agreed to do the show, I send out the tech form, and in the beginning part of the tech form is, some show logistics, and then it's I agree that I will send my song to this email address by this date. And then there's, a section for compensation where it says, I agree that I will get X dollars for my performance. My compensation package also includes photos of my act and an equal tip split. Um, and I make them initial that in that form. So it's all in one thing. So there's no chance that they got multiple emails and missed one. It's all in one place. And I also include in there call times and just some basic expectations about behaviors, staying sober until after you've performed and professional behavior on stage and backstage and all those things. So, yeah, providing that stuff in writing is amazing because you sometimes need something to fall back on, just to say, hey, I'm not sure why there's a conflict here. This is what we agreed to. And if you have it in writing, that can be really helpful. So yeah, definitely gives the warm fuzzies when you're given that information. That kind of goes into expectation setting, right? So are you being given an expectation in a reasonable time for you to execute it, right? If you're told that your tech is due in 30 minutes, that's maybe not super realistic. But if they say your tech is due, in 2 weeks, and they're clear about that, and then, the day before they drop it in the chat, hey, just a reminder, your tech is due tomorrow, right? They have set that expectation. And then, the flip side of that is as somebody that is booked, there is an expectation that you're going to act in good faith to meet those deadlines or to communicate about those deadlines if there is a special circumstance or a complication there, right? So, expectation settings and then communication about those expectations, right? I'll send everybody your promo images by Friday, but then Friday comes and I'm sick. I'm going to drop it in the chat. I'll get you your promo images by the end of the weekend. Thanks for your patience there. And then I make sure I get it done, right? So communicate about those expectations. If you need to adjust them, you do it within reason, but communicate to people and let them know that the expectation has adjusted. Sometimes if I have to change something kind of late in the game, I'll even say, like thumbs up this comment so that I know you saw this, so that there's no confusion or ambiguity there about call times or any of that stuff. So setting clear expectations and then communicating them in that agreed upon space, all green flag behavior. Another good one to watch for is references or a good reputation in your local community. Um, I think we all know that in a lot of performance spaces, and Burlyland is no different, that people have strong opinions. And if you ask someone, hey, would you recommend working with that person? You're going to get the truth. And so if you see a producer that you like the look of the show, but you've never heard of them before, or you don't really know them, ask around. Ask a few people in your local scene if they're maybe from another town. Try reaching out to, maybe someone that you follow on Instagram that's more local to that area and say, hey, I saw this casting call for this show by this producer. I'm just wondering if you've worked with them before. And that's okay. If you want to get those references or validate that they're, a good person to work with, if that's what you need to feel comfortable, then do that. Um, but right, if you hear just word on the street like, oh wow, Ember's a really great producer to work with. Like that's to me is a positive because especially coming from like a customer service type background, I know that people are way more likely to complain about things than to talk them up. And so if you're hearing people go out of their way to say, you should try and work with so and so, or yeah, that's a great show to try and get on, I would take those things really seriously and as very strong green flags. Experience is a green flag. Um, and that's not to say that you being new at show production is immediately a red flag, right? But having a good track record, having a good rapport, having several successful shows under your belt, that's a green flag. And that should hopefully provide some confidence and reassurance to your performers that you know, can do this. So, um, when you are accepting gigs, are you doing a little bit of research? How long has this producer been putting on shows? If you most people have social media these days, so like just do a little scroll through their stuff. Or, is this their first time ever putting on a show? That doesn't necessarily mean I'm not going to apply for it, but maybe instead of waiting for them to provide some communication, if I notice it's not happening right away, maybe I'll be more proactive and ask because maybe they just don't have uh like a timeline developed for their show production, right? So it's just something to have in the back of your mind. Like, do I know that this producer has done this a lot of times, or is this the first time they've ever done it? And maybe there's going to be some hiccups that we need to work out. So, not all of these mean the opposite is an automatic red flag. It's just these are things that would be good green flag behaviors. So. are they respectful? Whether that is in your group chat or backstage at an event or when they're talking to the kittens or the venue staff or their partner or whatever. Do they seem like a respectful person? Because at the end of the day, it might only be for one gig, but that person is hiring you, which kind of makes them your boss for just a very brief amount of time, right? Even if it's you know, just a gig, it's just a contract, it's a one-time thing. You guys are in a contract together, even if it's a verbal one or an implied one, right? You have an agreement. And there's part of that is we're all going to act in good faith. We're going to treat each other with respect. And so if you see them treating other people with respect, that's going to be a green flag. Are they compassionate and kind if someone, misunderstands something in the group chat or has to drop out of the show? Like, how do they handle that? Is it handled with grace and respect? Or is there, throwing shade and snide comments or whatever, right? Because that would be pretty red flag behavior to me. So respectful and kind, obviously, it would be it would be green flags there. A lot of these I feel like go for any aspect of life, right? You want respectful people. You'd like to work with experienced people with good reputations. So it's really no different in burlesque land, but I think sometimes with all the glitz and the glamour, and some people are just really good at marketing, it can be kind of hard to tell what's under all the like the rhinestones and Instagram filters and whatnot. So, consistent and accountable, right? So all of this is kind of in that same vein. Are they providing regular updates? Are they accountable? If they say, I'm going to pay you out within a week, are they actually paying you out within a week? Because if they're making commitments and they're hitting them, then that's a green flag. If they're flaky or inconsistent, or they're saying, yeah, I'll pay you out the night of the show. And then the night of the show, they say, I'll pay you out tomorrow. And then tomorrow, they say, I'll pay you out next week, right? Like that's not consistent. That's not holding themselves accountable for what they said. And so that would be kind of concerning to me. So again, green flags. They're consistent in how they show up. They are consistent in the messaging that they're putting out and they are accountable to themselves and to others for the things that they agree to. So again, all good green flag behaviors. I know everybody does it for a different reason, whether you're doing it for fun or for the art or you're trying to make a whole ass living off of it, but fair compensation, that's a green flag. If someone is offering you 20 bucks and a drink ticket, that's probably not going to be like super worth your time. And, and maybe we'll talk about in a minute. We'll talk about why that may still be a show that you want to take for some reason. But if you're seeing producers that are offering, kind of at your community's average rate or above that average rate or whatever that looks like, right? Fair compensation. Are they compensating you for the time and effort and energy that you put into building this whole act, driving across town, sitting backstage for an hour and a half, getting naked on stage in front of a bunch of drunk people, and then all of that, driving back home, right? So are they fairly compensating you? And, like I mentioned earlier, when I talk about compensation in my shows, yes, there's a monetary portion of that, but it also comes with like professional photos and um, some of those things. So um maybe it is a really maybe it's a lower rate, but you get like a really high quality video of your act, you know? So is the compensation fair to you? Fair is a little bit different for everybody in that respect, but are you feeling like you're fairly compensated? And I think this is the last one in my green flags bucket, but community oriented. So are they are is this is this producer, is this group that you're working with, is this troupe, right? Are they working with the community? Are they giving back? Are they, um, doing things for local charities or for raising funds for even, fellow producers or putting on workshops or networking events, right? And so this is, again, not one where just because they don't do those things, it doesn't immediately mean I'm never going to take a booking or that's a terrible thing, because everybody has their strengths and not everybody needs to be a community organizer. But are they participating and a good member of your burlesque community? As a troupe, as a producer, as a venue, whatever that looks like. Are they invested in the good of burlesque, you know? Um, so any questions about any of these green flag behaviors or other things that maybe popped into your head as I was talking through them that you would like to see as also a green flag? Yeah. So I think next slide here, we talk a little bit about, again, all of the many, 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 many different things that we need to communicate about. And again, an acknowledgement that communication is a two-way street. And what that means to me is like, yes, your producer should make that information like readily available and they should be offering it to you. But if you are missing a piece of information as a performer, you need to ask for it. And, well, they didn't tell me when call time is, so I'll just show up when I want to show up. That's not really like a good attitude to approach the whole thing with, right? Because maybe they did say it and you just missed the message, or maybe it just slipped their mind, and because producers are humans too, right? And maybe they just forgot to post it. So if you have a piece of information that you need to be a successful performer and it's not already been made readily available to you, ask for it. Because again, that communication is a two-way street. Yes, we want them to be giving us everything, hopefully plenty in advance. But if it's the day before the show and you're like, huh, I've never been to this venue and I don't know what the parking situation is, right? You can just drop it in your chat, reach out to one of the other performers, talk to someone you know that's already performed there before, right? Communication's a two-way street. So things that you might want to consider or look for, right? Again, we hope that the producer is making a lot of this just available so you just have it there when you need it. But things could include the financials, right? How much am I going to get paid? When am I going to get paid? How do you handle your tips? Is it a tip split or is it by act? Um, is there an expectation that the performers like tip out the kittens, right? All of those things. If you have a question about it and it's not been made available to you, go ahead and ask about it. Venue logistics. So I think Georgia, you mentioned that you got a video from your person, kind of just panning the whole room. That's amazing. That's good stuff. So venue logistics can also include, though, like I just mentioned, parking. Is this street parking? Is there a lot? Should I Uber because there's like two parking spaces and 50, like there's going to be 50 cars, right? Um, are there stairs? Is it upstairs or downstairs? Is it, kind of, what does the venue space look like, especially if you have any kind of accommodation that you might want to request or need to request? Is there a clear path from the dressing room to the stage? How far is it from the dressing room to the stage? All those things can fall under that umbrella of venue logistics. So again, if it's somewhere that you're not familiar with, or you don't have access to go walk through yourself and see, um, ask the producer, ask the troupe that you're working with, ask someone to get you that information. Next one is cast and crew. So, I always like to know who am I performing with? Who else is on this cast? Who's the crew? Who are my kittens? Is there a stage manager, right? Some productions have a stage manager. Some just run with kittens. Um, some will have like a separate sound person. Some have a lights, like a spotlight or like lighting person. So is a part of this crew? Who are people that are a part of this production that I, as a performer, may need to interact with to make sure, again, that this is a successful performance? So, anyone on that cast and crew, again, if it's not abundantly clear to you and you're like, hey, I have this really specific lighting cue, who is the person that's running the lights at the show, right? So, if it's not made available, ask for it. Conduct and conflict expectations. Again, this is something that I add into my agreement with performers, but I know not everybody does. But essentially, it's just kind of stating that, um, we are committed to not letting like interpersonal conflict or outside drama impact the success of the show, and that if something does happen during the course of the show, that if somebody's like personal safety or well-being is at risk, to come direct it to me immediately during the show. But if it is something that can wait and be addressed immediately after the show, that is the preference. Right? Because we don't want people, there's a performer on stage and there's an argument going on backstage. We don't want that. We don't want people like treating each other disrespectfully or being catty or um, whatever that looks like, right? So I try and communicate a little bit about like what that expectation is for my performers. Um, but if you have a question, if you maybe you get the cast list and you're like, oh gosh, that person's on the cast, I'm pretty sure if that person sees me, like they're gonna try and fight me, right? So maybe just talk to your producer and say, "Hey, I have kind of a complicated past with this person. Could maybe you just need to be like at opposite ends of the set list, so you're not like trying to get ready right together." I don't know what that looks like for you, but know your limits, right? And know what you're comfortable with. And if you have questions about how they'd like you to handle a situation, or if you need a little bit of support to know that you maybe have someone's got your back, right? Have those conversations up front. The worst thing that can happen is it's like the day of the show, you show up for call time and you're like, oh, by the way, I have all of this complicated history with this performer and I need a separate dressing room and I need, like yes, you want to speak your truth and like accommodate like like advocate for yourself, but give people enough time to adjust and make those plans. So, um communicate. If you have something conflicting, if you have something difficult with one of the other cast or crew members or the venue, just talk about it and hopefully you guys can come to some sort of a shared understanding of like, okay, cool, this is how we will handle this scenario. Or maybe when you come to them with those concerns, they say, I don't care, that's your problem, figure it out, right? That could be a big red flag. And then you say, you know what, I actually don't feel comfortable going forward with this show? So all that is to say, know your own comfort level there and ask for support where you need it. Try and understand what those expectations are with the specific producer or troupe that you're working with. Oops, wrong way. There we go. Tech details. So again, most people work off of like a tech form, typically like a Google form these days, um, where they're going to ask, are you starting your on or off the stage? Are you, are there any special setup? Do we need to be placing a chair? Do we need to be placing your fans? Do you have any special cleanup? Is there going to be like a blood splatter? Is there going to be feathers everywhere? So if you know that there is something about your act, even if it's literally just the costume pieces that you want to make sure get returned to you, If you are not being prompted to provide that information, offer it up. Ask, when and where do you want all of my tech details? Right? Who's going to be the kitten that I can tell my costume pieces to? If they haven't made that clear to you, try and be proactive there and find it out so that it doesn't get to be show day and then, they don't know what your act is about and you don't know who to work with to make sure that it's successful and all this chaos. So if you're not being prompted to provide that tech info, be proactive, ask where they want it, and then provide it. Um, Same thing, if especially if you have like a prop or something that you kind of hand off during your act. That one's not quite as standard of a question. So maybe the tech form is like, do you start on stage or off stage? What costume pieces do you need back? What song is it? There's not a lot of room for nuance in that tech form. And so if you're like, well, I need someone to hand me my fans at 46 seconds, reach out to your producer or your stage manager and just say like, hey, I submitted my tech form, but it didn't really have a good place to put this piece of information. How would you like me to get it to you? Is this good? Right? Because maybe they're like, oh yeah, I'll just make a note of it right now and it's good. Or maybe they say, you know what, thank you for letting me know. Can you actually send it in an email to XYZ? Right? So just as much as it's on the producer to try and ask for those things, if you have things that are specific to your act that you need to happen and you're not being asked for it, start the conversation. And then timeline, right? So when is my tech due? What is call time? What is the show time? Do we have a hard out for the end of the show? When will I get paid? When will I get my photos? How long is intermission? Right? Those are all timeline related questions that, again, you might not get like one cohesive, like big long list of every time and date, related to the show, but are they giving you enough information to be successful? Are they telling you like, hey, your tech's going to be due in a week or 2 weeks? And then are they telling you several days, 2 weeks, whatever, in advance, like this is call time. We have a hard out of 10:30 p.m. Intermission's gonna run 15 minutes, right? So if those are things that you need, ask for them if you're not being given them. And then last is accommodations. So, if you are maybe someone that is strobe sensitive, or I have worked with someone before who is allergic to like uh the smoke machine stuff, right? The fog machines. She was allergic to that stuff. I've been in a show where one of the other performers was like violently allergic to lavender. And so we all got an email that was, please, please, please make sure you don't have like any lavender perfumes or lotions in your bag.
I'll eat my bowl of fruit and
Um,
I'll help you with your money if you want.
Maybe it's something like
Well, for
I
now.
need to have a chair available for me as soon as I come off stage so that I can sit down because I'm going to be winded and I have a bad knee, right? So if there is something that you need to be safe or to be successful, um, ask for it, right? And hopefully with enough notice that people can like try and make a plan and fulfill what you're asking for. They can meet that accommodation. Because we're all acting in good faith. We all want to just put on a good show. We all want everyone to be successful and safe. So if you know, I really can't do the stairs down to the dressing room at this venue, ask the producer, is there a different place not down the stairs where I could get ready? And maybe that means you have to come like mostly in your costume and you just do a little quick change backstage, right? That's like a bit of a meeting in the middle, right? So if you have something that you need to be safe or successful, please speak it and speak it early, um, so that we all have a chance to make a plan and execute that plan successfully. So lots of different things there, lots of different facets of a show, right? There's money, there's the building, there's the interpersonal level, there's tech details of your costume and your props and your music. There's due dates, like all these things. And so, right, a good producer again is going to be providing that information to you in a proactive manner. You know, hey, thanks everybody. I'm glad you're on the show. Your tech is going to be due on this date. I'll get you call times in a couple weeks. You know, those are things that you want to look for. And then again, if you're not getting the information and you're like, wow, I really feel like I need to know that by this point, just reach out and ask. And maybe they'll be like, I'm so sorry, I was waiting on the venue to answer this. I'll have an answer for you tomorrow, right? But just ask. That's all good. So red flags. What, and we don't have to name any names, but have you ever encountered a red flag from like a producer, or you took a gig and then you were like, "Ugh, not feeling as confident about this now." What would those red flags look like to you?
Ghosting on payment. On
What's that?
agreed, ghosting on agreed
Oh,
payment.
ghosting on payment.
If it's
That's a
been
pile
agreed.
of red flags. Yeah.
Awful.
Awful. We don't do that in this house. Absolutely not. What else? What else would be a red flag from a producer or a gig that you're working with?
Over intoxication.
Mm, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If especially, if you're a producer that has any other part in the show, especially, then you have to be clear-headed. I know that there are like bigger productions where like you're the producer, but you're kind of hands off. You're providing the money maybe, but you're not like running the show. I guess maybe then you could be a little bit tipsier, but yeah, if you are a point of contact during that event or trying to communicate about that event, you want to be clear-headed. You don't want to be discussing your pay rate with someone who's like pouring their drink down themselves. Any others that you guys have either experienced or can imagine happening that are just really cringy?
When producers, I guess it's what you were saying about code of conduct. Please ignore my babies in the background. I guess
You're good.
it's what you were saying of code of conduct when
Uh-huh.
producers have a certain code of conduct for performers,
Mm-hmm.
like being respectful and non-discriminative, but then they are that themselves.
Mm, double standards are not sexy.
That's the phrase I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
double
yeah.
standards.
Yeah. No, that's a huge red flag because that makes it so much harder to trust, what's gonna happen. Yeah. Any others? Those are all great. Otherwise, I got a list of them here we'll talk through as well. Okay. So yeah, inconsistent communication. And that can be anything from they've just dropped off the face of the earth and you just haven't heard anything from them to hey, I'll have you an update on this day. Hey, I'm actually going to have an update on this date, right? Like continually like moving those goalposts and not meeting their commitments. Like that's inconsistent. It can also be like inconsistent in tone or messaging. Like maybe one day they're like, um, yeah, I expect everybody to, post on social media like once a week. And then the next day they're mad that you didn't post daily, right? So inconsistent communication is a huge red flag just because, again, it's really hard to build that level of trust if they're saying one thing and doing another, or they're saying nothing and you don't have the information you need to feel confident and successful. And then again, disrespectful or dismissive, right? I think sometimes I think people, you start as a kitten and then you become a performer, and then I think people think that they need to become a producer. Like it's like the next rung on the ladder. And like once you've hit that rung, like you know more, or like whatever, right? So when I see people being like really dismissive of like newer performers or people that just like haven't had as many resources to like take classes or to polish their costumes. Right? We're all at different places in our burlesque journey, and I totally understand that like if you're curating a show for this type of aesthetic, you maybe don't want to cast an act that is completely outside of that aesthetic. But there are ways that you can do that that are still respectful and honor what that person created and offered you, right? You can say something like, "Hey, thank you so much for submitting that. It doesn't really fit the theme for this show, but I encourage you to watch for future casting calls and see if it's a better fit then," right? That's respectful, that acknowledges them. Um, right? So you're not just saying like, "Wow, that act is really like not good enough for my stage," right? Like that would be a horribly dismissive, disrespectful, red flaggy thing to say to somebody. Um, and so watch again, I think like people will say like uh judge someone like how they like talk to the waiters or whatever, right? So look for like how they talk to other people, like people that are helping them or people that, maybe they are in a position where they could boss them around, right? Are they still treating them with respect and with kindness, or are they being dismissive and kind of rude? Um, And again, like I would say, take this one with a grain of salt, right? Because everybody has a bad day here and there. But if it's like a pattern, or if, you're hearing from multiple other performers, like, wow, this person has been rude to me consistently, like every time I talk to them, and you're hearing that repeatedly, like that's pretty red flaggy. Um, but if the person has been like typically pretty good to work with, and then they have an off day, maybe talk to them and say like, hey, I've always loved working with you, but last Saturday you kind of seemed a little bit off. What's going on? Um, if you have that level of rapport with the person, right? So again, disrespectful or dismissive treatment of your other cast and crew and your kittens and everybody involved. That would be a red flag. A poor reputation, right? Again, bad news travels fast. If there is somebody that has been hurtful or damaging or negatively impactful to your local burlesque scene, probably someone's willing to tell you about it. Someone has feelings about it. And so if you're hearing that someone has a bad reputation, again, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to immediately write that person off, because sometimes, again, people have bad days, or maybe that person was in a really bad place mentally and they took it out on everyone around them, but that was like a year ago and they've done a lot of work and they're trying to make, they're doing better now, right? So this is where I talk about like knowing what's comfortable for you. If what you are hearing makes you feel uncomfortable, don't take the show. If what you are hearing is like, well, that doesn't sound great, but I think that that's not something that should hurt me, like I'm okay with that. Like you can, I'm not saying don't take the gig just because someone has a bad reputation, because again, bad news travels fast. People like to complain, especially really like with social media. It seems like people like to kind of like pile on, and like one person will be mad and then a lot of people kind of have to like make a statement like disavowing or backing up or whatever that looks like, right? So don't necessarily base it just off of like one perspective, but if it's becoming a trend, if you've heard it across the board, like maybe that's something to consider. Like, is this a safe person? Is this a good person to be working with? If they discourage feedback, that's a big red flag. Um, and what I mean there, if you come to them and you're like, hey, I think you're running your show all wrong, you should do it like this, right? I probably wouldn't be very receptive to that feedback either. But if you came to me as a performer and you said, hey, uh, this one part of your show production was really kind of
Hey,
hard for me
hey.
to, really kind of hard for me to follow. Maybe it was the group chat updates, or maybe it was the backstage area was just really shitty, right? If they come to you and if you're telling a person like, "Hey, I don't like this piece," maybe there's nothing that the producer can do about it, but at minimum they can hear you out, right? Um, they can hear you out and they can say, "Yeah, I know that dressing room is really tiny and really dark, and we are trying to find a bigger, better venue that we can do these shows in," right? You can hear that feedback and it maybe isn't something that they can fix or action right away, but are they hearing you out? That's the big thing. If they're shutting it down, if they're coming to you and they're like, "Hey, could we talk about some stuff that happened at the last show," and they're dismissive or they don't want to hear it, or you provide that feedback and they get really hostile or um, aggressive back. Like that would be something that's a red flag because I believe that we're all still learning and growing, and I don't think anybody knows the 100% perfect answer for everything. So if someone's coming to you because they had an issue, maybe be open to, is there a better way that I could try and do this? And maybe the answer is no. Maybe that is the best that you can do with the venue and the space, but maybe you can do something better. Another red flag in that same vein would be someone that makes you feel like you can't ask questions. And so sometimes that looks like you're in a group chat and someone else asks a question and they're treated poorly, or the response that they get makes you think, "Ugh, glad I didn't ask that," right? That's not a space that's going to make you feel like you can ask the questions that you need. Um, so big, big red flag. Again, if they're discouraging feedback, if they're discouraging questions, if they're making it feel like you can't advocate for yourself in those ways, that's a big red flag. Uh, Similar to the inconsistent communication, if they break their word, that's a huge red flag, right? We talked about like ghosting payments. Like that's a big fat red flag. We don't like that. If they uh, maybe you've reached out to this person and you're like, "Hey, I'd love to be in your monthly show in June." And they're like, "Oh, June's full, maybe next month." And then you reach out and you're like, "Hey, I'd love to be a part of your July show." And they're like, "Ooh, I just cast July, maybe next month." You know, and then you reach out in August and then there's, like if there's always a reason, right? So they're kind of like stringing you along. They keep saying, "Yes, I'll book you," but then they don't book you. Like that becomes a red flag after a while. Shit happens and maybe it happens once and maybe it happens twice, but it certainly shouldn't happen, more than that, I wouldn't think. So if people are making commitments and then they're breaking them, that is a huge red flag, and you need to, again, if you have something in writing that you can kind of go back and you can say, "Hey, I don't really know what's going on, but you said that this was going to happen on this timeline." Uh, Hopefully they make it right at that point, but definitely look out for people that are just saying what they need to say in the moment and then not really taking the actions to follow through on it. Um, and then folks that fail to provide a safe show environment. So whether that is, um, maybe, I don't know, this is a wild scenario I've not experienced, but maybe like the producer of the show starts dating somebody that's like super problematic, and they just show up at all the shows, and people have been like, "Hey, producer, like I really don't feel comfortable with that person being here," and they don't hear that feedback. They're then failing to provide a safe space for your show. Um, if it's a bajillion degrees and there's not like fan or water or something available for you, like that's not probably a safe space. If you are, you know, going down some dark, dingy alley with no lights to get out of the venue at 1 o'clock in the morning, and there's nobody like offering to like maybe escort you to your car, or like a group of you walking together, or the Midwest mom and me. I'm not a mom actually, but like that energy, I'm from the Midwest, but text me when you get home, right? Like I like to see everybody in my show like say something after they get home because that's how I am. I want to make sure everybody's okay. So are they failing to provide a safe space? Um, if there's a heckler in the audience, are they taking steps to remove that person if appropriate? Maybe like you get one warning and then you're out. But if they're saying some truly horrific shit, get them out of there. Because again, it's a burlesque show and we spend so much time and energy like trying to curate safe, inclusive, celebratory spaces that we're not going to let anyone mess that up. So, and then last, I think we've touched on this one a little bit, but if they're booking problematic performers, that's something again, maybe they don't know that person's history. So, reach out as a courtesy. Hey, I saw you booked so and so, and I don't know if you know it, but they've been posting all this white supremacist bullshit online, right? And then the producer can take action as appropriate, right? Like maybe they're like, "Oh my God, I did not realize that. I will remove them from the lineup." Or maybe the producer says, "Yeah, I know, I don't care." You know, they bring in seats. They put butts in seats. And then like as the performer, then you get to decide like, do I want to still take this gig or do I want to step back because this is just like an icky situation now? Um, so again, those are all things that you kind of have to decide for yourself. But overall, it's a red flag. Just consider it. Just scrutinize it. Just look at it a little more closely and decide, is this actually a good fit or can I skip on this one? I know we're at about an hour, so I'll try and talk a little faster. Sorry about that. So conflict resolution. I will preface this with there are literal professionals and scholars who have devoted their whole careers to conflict resolution and researching and teaching and documenting conflict resolution skills and styles. I am not that person. I am just the oldest of a very large family of children, and so I have had to resolve all sorts of conflict, whether it's at home or at work or in burlesque or whatever it is. So again, my experience is not the law. But if you're navigating a tough interaction, there's someone that's just treating you kind of shitty or just has been a problem for a while, what does that look like? How do you solve that? Um, so if you need to talk to someone, is the setting appropriate, right? Like, is backstage over intermission the time to bring up, like, hey, why are you always like poaching my bookings or my venues or whatever that looks like, right? Is it an appropriate setting? Is it a good place to have that conversation? Is it a conversation that maybe could be had online versus in person? Like, which is going to be better, right? There's pros and cons. You have those conversations like online, you've got a text written record, but you also don't have body language and vocal tone and, you know, a vibe check that you can have in person. But on the flip side, if you meet in person and some sorts of commitments are made, you don't have that written record the same way. You can maybe send like a summary text or a thanks for meeting, this is what we agreed on text, but just pros and cons there, which is going to be more appropriate for the conversation that you need to have. Um, Setting a neutral place and party. So if you are going to meet up in person, go to a neutral coffee shop. Meet up after a dance class or something. Try not to do it at somebody's show or at somebody's home or workplace or whatever that is, right? Because you want to both be in a neutral, safe environment. And sometimes that can even mean like bringing a third party, hopefully someone that's like pretty neutral or like knows you both kind of equally that wouldn't like you're not going to bring your bestie and be like, this is my neutral party because I don't know about you, but my bestie would not be neutral. So making sure that you've got the appropriate place and people timing, right? So intermission, not the time. Even sometimes like immediately after the show might not be the time. Um, Maybe it's the next day. Maybe it's, after you've calmed down a little bit. Maybe whatever that looks like is just, is this the appropriate time to be having this conversation? Do I have enough like minutes time to do this? Do I have the energy to do this right now? Um, and then try to go into things without assuming. You don't want to assume their intentions. You don't want to assume that they know all of your personal boundaries, right? Unless you have told them, like, hey, I'm like really sensitive to, you know, clowns, and, they show up in a full clown outfit and you're upset because you have a clown phobia, right? I don't know, it's just an example. If they didn't know, then it's really difficult for them to plan for that. And so that's where don't assume that they knew that and that they maybe acted with intentions to stress you out or make you uncomfortable. Um, you can approach them and say, hey, I don't really know what was going on the other night, but it really freaked me out when you X, and I would really love it if, when we're in shared spaces again, if you could avoid that. But you don't want to assume that they have done the action with the intention to hurt you, or that they, maybe there's a certain like pet name or nickname. Like maybe you really hate being called darling. Like I call people darling sometimes. Maybe you hate darling. Maybe it's like a really like upsetting phrase for you for some reason, and they're like, hey, how you doing, darling? And it sets you off in a bad way. You if you can't like you want to assume that maybe they didn't know that that was a word that was sensitive to you. And so, you know, at an appropriate time in an appropriate setting, you go to that person and you say, like, hey, just so you know, like, I really dislike this word. It makes me feel really uncomfortable, and I would really appreciate it if you could not use it towards me again, right? And so that is a way that you have, like, approached that conflict, that now they know your boundary, they know what you're comfortable with, and they hopefully will be receptive to that and say, like, sorry, dude, I didn't know that. I will try and not do that again. Um, so don't assume that they have bad intentions. Don't assume that they know what's going to bother you or what's not going to bother you. Just go in with an open mind. And then drama is bad for your skin and your soul. So sitting there frowning and being grumpy and being negative, it's not a good look outside or inside. It's not good for you. So, um, if there's if there's stuff that maybe it doesn't really personally impact you, like maybe you don't need to have an opinion or a stake in it. Maybe it's just other people who don't get along. That's okay. You don't need to share a post and make a hot take and you know perpetuate this cycle. You can just read it and see it and move along. Um, And then on the flip side of that, if you have wronged someone, right? If you have someone that's come to you and they're like, hey, Georgia, it was really crappy when you X, just a couple tips there, be open and listen to them. It's really, I know sometimes I didn't do that. I would never, but listen to them because maybe you did and you didn't realize it, or maybe you thought you were doing this, but to them it read like that. Be open and listen. Um, and then addressing the impact before your intention. So if they're saying it really hurt my feelings when you picked my favorite song for this show, you don't want to start with, well, I didn't know it was your favorite song, right? You can say, oh, dude, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, because the impact is that your troop mate or your friend or whoever is hurt. And so it's important to address that they are hurt before you try and talk about like your stuff. And that's honestly like a skill that applies in all sorts of conflict resolution scenarios. If someone comes to you and they say, "You've hurt me," you want to acknowledge the hurt before you try and, explain why what you did wasn't supposed to hurt them, right? Um, and then, hopefully through the course of being open and listening and having like some open dialogue, maybe you're like, "Oh shit, I could have done better." And you can acknowledge that in the moment, thank you for bringing that up to me. I totally never considered that. I am going to try and be more mindful in the future so that I don't do this again, right? So acknowledge what you could have done better and what you'd like to do in the future, to make it right or to make sure that it doesn't repeat itself. And then respect their response. Nobody is like entitled to forgiveness. So if you've done something that pissed somebody off and you find the appropriate setting and time and you have a conversation and you're open and you listen and you realize that you screwed up bad and you apologize, even if you followed all of those steps perfectly, you are not entitled to their like forgiveness or like a clean slate, You can apologize and they can be like, sure, but I still don't really feel safe around you, or thanks for the apology, but, I still don't want to work with you, whatever. Um, you're not entitled to the forgiveness just because you did the steps. Like, would it be great? Sure. But it's not a guarantee. And so you have to kind of be okay with that. Like again, yes, that would be the ideal, but if they don't immediately respond with, you know, "Oh, that's okay. I totally forgive you. We're good, dude." If they don't respond with that energy, it's not, you can't go back to them and be like, "Well, I apologized. We're good now, right?" Like that's that's maybe not the journey that they're on at this point. Maybe they're not ready to be all good yet. So respect their response and kind of meet them where they're at. Um, and then walk the walk. So if you say that you're going to take steps to try and not repeat this harmful thing, then actually follow through on that and, make sure, whether it's doing some research or listening to a podcast or whatever it looks like, that you're putting in the work to actually try and be what you say you're going to be. Right? We all want to act with integrity. We want to be people that can stand by our word. And so, if you're apologizing to someone and you're like, "Wow, I'm going to try and learn more about this topic so that I can be more informed in the future." Take those steps. Actually educate yourself. Otherwise, it's just empty words. It's bullshit. So, if you're gonna say something, follow through on it. Walk the walk. All right, so just a couple wrap up thoughts here. Not all gigs are for you, and that's okay. Um, so when you look at, the pay rate, like right earlier, I think I said, $20 in a drink ticket. If it costs you $20 to Uber to the venue one way, like that doesn't seem like it makes sense to you, right? So don't feel like you have to accept a gig just for stage time or because someone's like, "Oh, we really, really, really need you in this show." Okay, well, if you really, really, really need me, then you need to really, really pay for my gas, right? So know what your boundaries are. Or if you look at a gig and you're like, "Wow, I love everything about this except for it's at this venue where my friend got groped at," like it's just like maybe there's one thing about it that you're just not okay with. Let it go. Not all gigs are for you. There will be other gigs that are a better fit. So don't put yourself in an uncomfortable position just because you're desperate for a stage spot. And then I also would encourage you to really try to not think of this as like a linear progression. Um, this isn't I get a gig with a 50 people audience, and then I get a gig with a 100 people audience, and then I get a gig with 200 people audience, and I'm only going to get bigger and better shows and venues and audiences forever, because that is a big fat lie. You will do small shows, you will do big shows, you will do shows at really cool venues with really tiny audiences. You will do shows with really, really, really small but super engaged rowdy audiences. Um, you'll be on a big fancy stage with red velvet curtains one night, and then you'll be on a sticky carpeted bar stage the next night, right? So um, don't like think that there's this one way escalator path of you do crappy gigs, you do slightly less crappy gigs, you do better gigs, and then you do amazing gigs, and that's the only path. Like, because that's not true. Um, and so don't get down on yourself. You know, if you think that you should be getting a gig, like maybe you should be, or maybe the other applicants were even better, right? So don't assume that just because you've gotten something before doesn't mean you're going to get it again. It doesn't mean you're going to get the next thing. Every application is like its own um, unique little adventure, which brings us to applying again. Um, in all of my classes, I kind of talk about the asterisk of intention because I think that intention is such an important part of everything in burlesque, on stage and off stage. So what I mean, apply it with intention. Um, I see this a lot with festivals too. If there's like a festival in like Florida and you're like, I'm gonna apply for this festival, and then you get an acceptance and you're like, I had no plan or ability to get myself from here to Florida, right? Why did you apply then if that wasn't like a thing that you actually intended to make happen? Um, it's the same thing. If you have like um if you have an act that it's just like maybe you've only performed it once, and when you performed it, like your corset broke and your skirt fell off and you dropped your prop, and like you have a video, but it's really not a good representation of the act. You know, are you still going to apply with it? Like apply with intention. So if you're going to apply, make sure that you have a good clean video, that you have that you're filling out the application accurately and correctly, and all of those pieces. Do it with intention. Know what you're applying for. Make sure that you have somehow, maybe not an exact plan, right? Like, don't send in your application and go book a flight. But if you got cast, could you reasonably get there? Do you have the financial or vacation time or whatever that looks like? Can you get there? So if that answer is no, then don't apply because you can't follow through on it. Um, Try to understand what rejection does or doesn't mean. Again, just because your act is not accepted for a show does not mean that it's a terrible act. It doesn't even mean that it's not a good act. It could be an amazing act. Just this past year for the New Mexico Burlesque Festival, we had like 300 applicants, and I want to say like a solid 10 of them somehow were like white feather fan acts, like big classic feather fans that were like white to cream colored. Um, and so at the end of the day, we had to deny most of those acts, not because they weren't good, but just because it's a festival where we want to showcase a lot of different types of burlesque, and it wouldn't make sense to have 10 white feather fan acts throughout that weekend. So know what the rejection means, know what it doesn't mean. Sometimes when you get a rejection, people will say, you can reach out for feedback. If you're going to reach out for feedback, make sure you're open to it because some people are better at giving soft feedback, and some people will be like, well, your costume was crap. I don't know, right? So um, don't take that rejection personally. Maybe there was a theme that they had in mind, or maybe there was. I applied for a show a while back because I have an anglerfish act, and I love my anglerfish act, and I applied with it, and I got a rejection, and they said, let us know if you'd like any feedback. And so I wrote back, and I was like, hey, is there anything that I could do to make this act, bookable next time? And they said, we loved the act. We just already have an anglerfish in our show. And so that's something like there was no dig on my act. They had just already given like a spot to an anglerfish act. So that rejection didn't mean anything about me. Um, so, phew. And then once you're in it, commit. So again, apply with intention. And then once you're cast, be committed. Um, you know, whether that's getting in your tech on time, putting in rehearsal time, getting the venue logistics so that when you get there, you're calm and cool and you're not stressing out. Um, promoting the event however is appropriate, especially with local shows. I think there's a lot more of an expectation to do show promotion, just because, you're trying to get your friends and your family and your librarian and whoever to come out to the show to support it. So commit to the show, give it your attention. Um, and then on show day, again, you want to give it your all. I know life happens, but you want to try and be present and be there. Because again, like, yes, burlesque is fun and we're there to have fun and it's silly and we're having a great time, but we're also like doing a job and we're also providing a service for people. Especially in an economy like this, like people can't always afford to go out and go to shows all the time. They don't maybe have a huge entertainment budget. And so if they have spent money on a burlesque show, we want to make sure that the show that they go to is amazing and that they walk away from that with a really cool experience. So once you're in it, commit. Give it your all that you can. Not so much all that you're like, depleting yourself otherwise, but give it what it deserves there. Um, so that is kind of the end of Booked and Blessed, like red flags, green flags, tips, tricks, do's and don'ts. Um, but my homework, and you don't even have to turn this in. It's just a thought exercise really for you guys. But consider your boundaries. So from a financial perspective, do you have a base rate? Um, for local shows, do you have a travel expectation rate? Do you need full reimbursement? Um, do you have a base rate? Consider that. Just maybe you're like, no, I really don't. I'm pretty open to whatever at this point. Like that can be an okay answer. Um, but maybe it's, $40 bare minimum. You know, if I have to travel, it's a $75 minimum, right? Like, what does that look like for you? What are you comfortable with? If the producer's like, yeah, it's a tip split and you really don't like tip splits and you prefer to keep your own tips and you think that's how it should be, you know, is that a deal breaker for you? Is that something that's a big enough deal that you're like, I actually don't want to do this show because it's not how I want to do my business? What are you comfortable with? If it's in a venue that you, again, your friend had a bad experience there, or you had a bad experience there, do you feel safe and comfortable in that space? All of those pieces. Are there instances where you can compromise? So the one time that I would say maybe like that, if you have a base rate and someone's lowballing you, you know, maybe it's like your dream venue, maybe you're getting paid not very much money, but you're going to be in a music video for like Beyonce or something, right? Or maybe it's for a charity that you really support, and you're not going to make a base rate, but that base rate is going to be donated, right? So this is everybody's personal journey. Nobody owes anybody anything in that respect. It is yours and yours alone to decide like what that looks like for you. And maybe as of today, it looks like one thing, and then later you see an opportunity that's like, ooh, I wouldn't normally take that, but I would get to perform with Jezebel Thunder. Oh, okay, like maybe I'll go to that venue that I don't normally love because I get to work with someone that I really look up to and admire, right? That's your journey. You can decide like what things you can compromise on and what things you don't want to compromise on. Are there producers that you feel more comfortable working with? And what about them fosters that feeling? So again, you don't have to tell me any of this, just over the next couple days or weeks, just think about these things. Are there producers that have consistently made you feel safe and valued and celebrated and supported? What did they do that made you feel that way? Was it communication? Was it their backstage demeanor? Was it a combination of all of those things, right? So just consider your boundaries. What makes you feel good about working with them? And then if you can identify like what what about them feels good, that can also help steer like, ooh, this actually doesn't feel like as good of a fit. And what things do you need to see in a show? Um, is that there needs to be, I don't know, like disclaimer, trigger warnings before the act, right? Is that something that's important to you if you um, use a strobe light or if you're sensitive to strobes? Are those things that are important to you, right? Because those are things that you need to communicate, and if they're your personal boundaries, um, you know, try to find a way to hold them and keep them. And if you have people that are not able to meet you there or not respecting those needs, again, that's probably all stuff that should, you know, steer the little compass towards maybe this isn't a good fit. Because if you're asking for things around your safety and your comfort, um, people should within reason and good faith try and make those things happen. I can't magically make the part of town that a venue is in safe if it's a rough part of town that the venue's in, but I can say, our door person will walk you out to your car at the end of the night, right? So if that's something that you need to feel safe to feel like it's a good, successful show, then communicate those things and try and make them happen for yourself. Um, so I would just encourage everybody to kind of reflect what kind of boundaries or things are really important to you as a performer when you're looking for gigs. Are you looking at the pay exclusively? Are you looking at the venue? Are you looking at like the total compensation package of pay, pictures, workshop experience? Um, is it a trade-off? Is it maybe like, oh, ah, it's going to be a lot of money to travel to this place, but it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to perform at this venue, right? So think about those types of things for yourself, just so that maybe when those casting calls come along, you already kind of know where you're at with your comfort level. So that was the end of our class. Um, so I would love if anyone has, oops, uh, questions or comments. Oh, okay, we're good. Yeah, if anyone has any questions or comments or like experiences you want to discuss, I'm happy to chat for a few minutes about that kind of stuff. If anybody has any experiences, like maybe you had a rough conflict and you kind of brought it up and it got handled a certain way by the producer. Any experiences like that?
One
Um,
thing I would, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Frisky, this is Mickey.
Yeah.
I don't really have any comments, but I see that you're offering to maybe do a hosting and a producing. I'd be more than happy to join in on those two.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did my hosting class a while back, and actually several people joined virtually. And that was one where I felt like I could have talked for like 6 hours. So I would love to do that one again, probably pretty soon here. So I'll definitely send you the invite when I do that.
Sure, thank you. And
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt whoever it
No,
was.
please do. Please do. That's great. I appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
Hey, Bones here. Hi, everybody. And thank you so much, Frisky. Fabulous class. Every
Thank you. Thank you.
bit of that is just a gem of knowledge to put in your toolbox. Also, remember when you're out there searching for shows and looking for gigs, those producers are bound by, the money they bring in. So if your name sells a ticket, yeah, you have a lot more leverage in getting that rate. But you have to ask yourself, okay, they say it's a $30 show, but we're walking out with $100 of tips every time. That's something you have to measure within that too. Now, if the producer's saying,
Exactly.
oh yeah, I guarantee $100 in tips, put them to it. Put it to them. I've been guaranteed, $30, but you'll get $100 in tips. And I'm like, wait, this is not $100 in tips. So make sure that if you're going to take a lesser gig at a lesser rate, that you're willing to take that cut.
Yeah.
And it's not the producer's fault they can't pay you more. It's just the way it is.
Yep, yep, absolutely. Anyone else want to add anything? Otherwise, we can go ahead and wrap it up and you can enjoy the rest of your Tuesday evening.
Thank you very much, Frisky. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining. Yeah, I teach what I call like my Burly Builders class is the second Monday of every month. I teach that at a local dance studio here in Albuquerque, but if there's ever anybody that shows interest online, I always make like a Zoom version. Sometimes if we do a little choreography or group activity, we have to adjust a little for the online side of things, but I'm always happy to include a Zoom link there too. So.
And where do we find out when you're teaching?
Yeah, I typically post them on my Facebook and Instagram pretty regularly, and I'm trying to get like a little email newsletter started as well. Just gotta get a little further along on that project, but I do post them on Facebook and Instagram, um, and then yeah, make like a little Facebook event for them so you can RSVP in there, and if I see you RSVP, I'll just make sure and get a Zoom link set up for you.
Okay, honey, I look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to seeing you. So, okay, with that, then I think we can go ahead and wrap up. I'm always available if anyone has questions or concerns or feedback on the class or a weird producer scenario that you're kind of like, this sounds like it's kind of red flaggy, but I didn't really want to like speak up and talk during class. Like, feel free to message me. I'm always happy to talk about those things. Like I said, at the end of the day, I just want more happy, safe, successful bookings for everybody. So whatever we could do to try and make that happen. So my door is open, my inbox is open, and I look forward to chatting with y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Frisky.
Yeah, have a good
Thank you
night.
so much.
Yeah, catch you later.